My name is Allison Becker, and I was doing just fine avoiding my past until last Thursday when I opened the wrong box in my mother's garage. It was supposed to be old Christmas decorations, tinsel, dusty wreaths, maybe that ridiculous mechanical reindeer we've had since the Clinton administration. Instead, I found a box labeled in my dad's handwriting, A, keep if she ever asks. I stared at it like it might explode. Dad passed away 7 years ago, and in all the time since, I've never once asked for anything. Not his tools, not his books, not even his half-finished model trains that still sit, untouched, on the basement table. I took a step back, thinking maybe I shouldn't open it. But then I did, and inside were letters, dozens, all addressed to me, all written by him. Now here I am, sitting in my rented Kia, parked down the street from the house I said I'd never go back to, gripping a stack of envelopes like they're radioactive. The air conditioning hums too loud. I can't bring myself to turn off the engine. I told myself I was only stopping by to drop off some groceries, maybe check on Mom's leaky faucet. But this box, these letters, they've blown a hole straight through that story. When I finally walk in, Mom's standing in the kitchen wearing her usual floral apron and an expression that could freeze lava. She doesn't look surprised to see me, just mildly inconvenienced. "You look tired," she says instead of hello. I smile. "Good to see you too, Mom." She motions to the sink, still dripping. "I called a guy, but you can look if you want." We go through the motions. I crouch under the sink. She makes coffee. We both pretend this is normal. But my pulse is loud in my ears because the letters are still in my bag. And I'm burning to ask her about them. I don't. Not yet. Instead, I mention the box like I found it by accident. "You know that one in the garage, with Dad's handwriting?" Her eyes narrow just slightly. "Which one?" she asks, but I can tell she already knows. I stand up, my knees pop. "The one labeled for me, with letters?" There's a pause, tight and quiet. Then she sets her mug down with a gentle click and says, "He wanted you to have those when you were ready." Her voice is neutral, but her posture isn't. She's already bracing for something. "I didn't know he'd written anything," I say, watching her closely. "He never mentioned it." Mom walks over to the window and stares at the street like it owes her money. "You were 15, she says. "You stopped speaking to him after that night." I feel my stomach tighten. That night. The phrase lands like a dropped plate, and we both flinch without moving. Here's the thing. I don't talk about what happened the night I ran away from home. Not to friends, not to therapists, not even to myself, not really. But apparently, Dad did. Apparently, he wrote it down. And now those letters are sitting 5 feet away from the woman who never once asked me why I left, who never once asked me to come back. She turns to face me, and for a second I see it. The tired, brittle version of the woman who used to sing in the car and dance while vacuuming. "If you read those," she says, "just don't hate him more, okay?" I nod, but it's a lie. I'm not sure what I'll feel, because after all these years, I'm not even sure who he was. And worse, I'm starting to wonder if I ever really knew her either. 15 is a strange age to decide your whole family is a lie, but I remember the exact moment I stopped asking questions. It was a Thursday, just like the day I found the letters. I'd overheard my parents in the kitchen, not yelling, not even arguing, just talking low like people do when they're holding back knives. I was sitting on the stairs, out of sight but close enough to hear, and I remember my father saying, "She deserves to know eventually," and my mother answering, "If you tell her now, she'll never look at you the same." I didn't know what it meant back then. I just knew that something in our house had shifted. From that day on, everything they said to me felt slightly edited, like I was on the outside of some invisible joke. I started staying late at school. I made excuses to sleep over at friends' houses. And eventually, I ran. Not far, just enough to send a message. I spent 2 weeks at Aunt Rose's place before my parents finally showed up to take me home. Dad cried. Mom didn't. Back in the present, I watch her now. The way she stirs her coffee and pretends we're still just fixing a sink. The letters are still in my bag, untouched. I haven't opened a single one. Part of me thinks that, as long as they stay sealed, I can keep pretending that nothing was stolen from me, that whatever truth he wrote in those envelopes doesn't rewrite the entire story I've been telling myself for years. But I'm lying to myself, and I know it. Because that night when I first found the box, I didn't just glance at the letters. I held one up to the light. I saw the date on the top corner, April 12th, 2007, my 16th birthday. He wrote to me on my birthday, even though he didn't say a word that day, even though he left halfway through dinner, and Mom said he had a work thing. That was the night I decided he didn't care. And yet, apparently, he did, just not out loud. Mom shifts in her seat. You want to read one here? She asks, like it's no big deal, like I might just skim a grocery list. I shake my head. Not yet. She nods once, like she understands, but we both know that's not really true. The kitchen clock ticks too loud. The faucet still leaks. Why didn't you ever talk about that night? I ask suddenly. My voice comes out calmer than I expected. She blinks. What night? She says, too fast. I just look at her. The silence stretches long enough to make her squirm. Because I didn't know what to say, she finally admits, and because he made me promise not to. There it is, the reveal I didn't even realize I needed. He made you promise? I repeat, more accusation than question. He said it was his to explain, that if you ever wanted to know, he'd tell you. And when he died, she trails off, shrugs. I figured maybe you didn't need to know after all. I stare at her. You thought I didn't need to know why I hated my father for 15 years? Her lips tremble slightly, but she catches herself. I thought you were better off angry at a dead man than broken by the truth. That line hits harder than I expected, because I understand what she's saying, but I still hate her for it. Outside, a car passes, the same neighborhood sounds I grew up with. Lawn mowers, barking dogs, wind chimes clanging in uneven rhythm. They're all still there, like no one else's life was paused by grief or confusion. Just mine. I reach for the bag. My fingers brush the top envelope, but I stop. Not yet. Mom, I say, what did he want to tell me? Her face goes blank. I don't know, she says. I never read them. I believe her, but it doesn't help. But you know something, I say. She nods. I know he loved you more than he knew how to show. It's not enough. It's never been enough. But somehow, those words crack something in me anyway. Maybe I'm not ready to open the letters, but I'm ready to stop pretending they don't matter. And for now, that feels like the beginning of something, or maybe the end of the story I've been clinging to. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept telling myself I'd open just one, just the top envelope, just enough to satisfy the itch without unraveling everything. I laid it on the coffee table, stared at it like it might grow teeth, then finally tore it open with the slow, cautious hands of someone about to read their own autopsy. The handwriting hit me first, bold, looping, messy in that familiar way. I'd forgotten the way he used to write his lowercase g's like little roller coasters. The letter started with, "Hey, Peanut," and that was enough to knock the air out of me. No one had called me that in years. I'd hated it back then, thought it made me sound childish. Now, I'd kill to hear it one more time. He wrote like he was sitting right next to me. No grand poetic metaphors, just straight up dad talk. I know I screwed things up. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I owe you the truth. That line landed like a brick. He mentioned the fight, not in detail, but enough. I let my fear turn into silence, and silence turns into damage faster than most people admit. And then, tucked behind the letter, folded like it was hiding, was a photograph. Not one I'd ever seen. It was me, maybe 10 or 11, sitting on Dad's shoulders at a street fair. I'm laughing so hard my eyes are squeezed shut, and he's got this huge grin like he's showing me off to the whole world. The back of the photo said, "Your happiest day." Mine too. I don't remember that day, and that wrecked me more than the letter. Because how do you process grief for memories you never knew you had? The next morning, I drove back to Mom's house without calling. She was out front, watering her rose bushes like it was any other Tuesday. I held up the photo. "Do you remember this?" She glanced at it, nodded. "June Fest. You had cotton candy all over your shirt. Your dad carried you for 2 hours because you refused to walk in your flip-flops." She smiled, then hesitated. "You don't remember?" I shook my head. "No." She set the hose down. "We used to have good days, Allie, even before everything went sideways." I sat on the porch steps, the photo still warm in my hand. Why didn't he show me this when we were still talking, before things got so cold? She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "Because I think he was waiting until you asked." "And I never did," I muttered. "No," she said gently. "You shut the door so hard, we both thought you'd boarded it shut. The thing is, I thought I had, but now these letters are prying it open from the inside. Letter by letter he was trying to explain, and I was the one who never let him." Mom sat beside me, which was rare. We never sat close growing up. She always said she wasn't the hugging type, like affection was something you inherited or didn't. But now she sat quietly beside me and said, "Your father had secrets, but not the kind you think." That froze me. "What do you mean?" She looked out at the street, squinting like she was weighing something. "He lost someone, a sister, before you were born. She died young, and no one in his family ever talked about it. He never really dealt with it. I think, I think that's why he panicked when you started pulling away. He thought he was losing another." I stared at her. "I didn't know he had a sister." She nodded. "Most people don't. So this whole time, all this distance, all this pain, wasn't just about me. It was about a ghost I never met, a grief that never healed. And suddenly, I saw my father not as a villain or a coward, but as someone broken in places no one ever looked. I didn't go home after that, not to my apartment, not even to the grocery store like I told myself I would. I just sat in the Target parking lot with the rest of the letters spread out across my passenger seat like an emotional minefield. I didn't open them all, couldn't, but I chose one that was marked with a single word in all caps: "Sorry." The letter wasn't dated, and it didn't start with "Hey Peanut." It started with, "I wasn't supposed to tell you this." That line alone should have made me stop, but I couldn't. My hands were trembling, but I read every word. Dad talked about the night everything blew up between us. The night I caught him in the garage, on the phone with someone I didn't recognize, whispering like he was hiding a second life. I thought he was cheating. I told Mom. She said I misunderstood, but the next day, he left for a week without explanation, and when he came back, everything was different. We stopped talking. The house got cold. Now, reading the letter, I find out he wasn't cheating. He was trying to find the sister he never knew he had, the child his father had outside of marriage, a half-sister living somewhere in Arizona. He'd been tracking her down for months, quietly, obsessively, terrified it would blow up his relationship with Mom. He wanted to tell me someday, he said. Thought maybe I'd be proud, that maybe we'd go meet her together. But I caught him before he was ready, and when I accused him of betrayal, he didn't know how to defend a secret that wasn't even his to tell. I finished the letter and sat in silence, the kind that buzzes in your ears, and for the first time since I was 15, I cried in public. When I got back to Mom's that evening, she was waiting on the porch. She stood as I approached, like she'd been rehearsing a speech in her head for the past hour. I read one, I said, the sorry one. She nodded. Then, I guess you know. No, I don't, I said, my voice sharper than I meant. I know he was chasing ghosts. I know he kept secrets. I know you lied to cover for him. She didn't flinch. Yes. The words sat heavy between us. You could have told me, I said. Any of it, at any time. I didn't know how, she replied. You were angry. You had a right to be. But I didn't know how to tell you your father was trying to rewrite his childhood by saving someone else's. I shook my head, and instead, he lost mine. Her eyes welled up, and I hated how much it moved me. She rarely cried. That was always my job. I was the feeler, the overreactor. She was the steady one. Now she looked like she'd been holding a scream in her throat for 15 years. I was scared, she whispered, that if you knew everything, you'd hate us both. I already did. She looked away. But now, I added softer, I don't know what I feel. We sat there on the porch, the sun dipping behind the houses, cicadas screaming like they were trying to split the sky open. And for the first time, I asked the question I'd never dared to voice. Did he love me? Like, really love me? Not just obligation, not just parenting. Did he love me? Mom didn't hesitate. With everything he had, he just didn't know how to give it to you without breaking open himself. It wasn't the answer I expected, but maybe it was the only one that made sense. 2 weeks later, I stood in my dad's workshop, surrounded by the quiet hum of memory. His tools still hung neatly on the pegboard. A half-sanded piece of cherry wood sat on the workbench, frozen mid-project, like he'd just stepped out for a smoke and never came back. I hadn't been down here since the funeral. I used to avoid it like a haunted room. Now, it felt like the only place where I could hear him clearly. I brought the last letter with me. Not the final one he wrote chronologically. I don't know which that was, but the one I saved for last. It was simply labeled, "If she ever forgives me." My hands shook as I unfolded it. It wasn't long, just a single page. He wrote, "If you're reading this, then something I did made its way through. Maybe not all of it, maybe not right away, but something. I hope it felt like me, not just my handwriting. I hope you never forget how much I tried to get it right in the end, even if I got most of it wrong at the start." He ended it the same way he always signed my birthday cards as a kid. "Love you more than pancakes, Dad." I sat on the floor and cried until my lungs hurt. Later that night, I brought a few of the letters to Mom's room. I didn't ask if she wanted to read them. I just left them on her nightstand with a note. You should know who he was, too. She didn't say anything the next morning, but she hugged me. A real hug. Not one of those half-pat, polite family gestures. A full-bodied, eyes closed, shaky breath kind of hug. It only lasted a few seconds, but it said more than any apology could. I went home after that, really went home. Back to my apartment, back to the plants I'd forgotten to water. I didn't call anyone, I didn't post about it. I just made myself pancakes for the first time in years and thought about the man I thought I hated and the girl I thought I'd outgrown. A few days later, I mailed one of the letters to my younger cousin. She's 15 now, the age I was when I burned the bridges I thought I'd never cross again. I didn't tell her what was inside. I just wrote on the envelope, "Sometimes love is quiet, but it's still there." And I think that's the thing I wish I'd known all along. You can miss something for years, and still find your way back to it. You can open a box and find your father again. You can hold a letter and finally hear the words he never got to say. And sometimes that's enough.